I just got a message from Commissioner Adrejo that he's having trouble and to please relay. I'm not sure if someone could reach out to him there before we start.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm finally in.
Got a message from Commissioner Adrejo.
And we are now live with the meeting. So Chair Chavez, anytime that you want to call the meeting to order, that's good. And we will continue to work with Vice Chair Alejo to get him on board with us as well.
I appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. Calling to order the City of Oxnard Planning Commission regular meeting for Thursday, May 6, 2021. We are starting at 6:05. A quick housekeeping item. In accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order N-29-20, members of the commission and some staff will be participating via teleconference. As shown on the agenda and online, please email all written public comments to planning@oxnard.org. For those wishing to speak, may visit oxnard.org/city-meetings to fill out the speaker form, or by calling 805-385-7878 by 2 p.m. the day of the meeting. For my colleagues, please use the raise hand feature when you wish to speak. Once you have been called on, please then click on the hand again to lower. When making a motion or seconding, please clearly state your last name. Because the meeting is electronic, all votes will be done by roll call. And that concludes our quick housekeeping. We'll turn to our manager, Mr. Kolwitz, for announcements.
Well, thank you for that, Chair Chavez. What we'll do actually first, we'll do roll call just to get the meeting started that way, and we'll keep going through. So Dee, if you can do roll call.
Chair Chavez,
Here.
Vice Chair Owejo. Oh, he's
All right. He's
raising.
here. It doesn't look like we could hear him yet, but we could see him.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Commissioner Connolly,
Here, thank you.
Commissioner Lopez,
Here, thank you.
Commissioner Meyer,
Here.
Commissioner Nash,
Present.
Commissioner Sanchez.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Well, Chair Chavez and members of the commission, you by now have seen that you have a new member who has joined you. So I wanted to welcome Commissioner Nash in particular back to the Planning Commission. So for those of you that don't know Commissioner Nash, I just wanted to give you the quick introduction of him as well, and then give him a moment to say any other follow-up words that he has. So Commissioner Nash comes to us with 43 years of marriage under his belt, 3 children and 1 grandchild. He was a City of Oxnard employee for 31 and a half years, coming from the wastewater treatment side of our world. He's a proud gaucho, so go UCSB, and has a BA in environmental studies as well as an AS in water science from Ventura College. Commissioner Nash retired from the workforce in 2010, but that didn't stop him from being busy. Since that point in time, he's given his services on a whole range of different committees and community organizations. He also is 100% committed to improving the city and the people, and he loves to help out in any way he can. And he hates resumes and self-aggrandizing, but enjoys getting the job done with like-minded individuals. So with that, Commissioner Nash, welcome to the Planning Commission. We're looking forward to your perspective being added to all those that you serve with on a day-to-day basis here. And if you have anything else you wanted to add, I gladly turn the microphone back over to you.
I survived the pandemic, so as we all did, so yay for us, right?
Yes. All right. Well,
So far.
So Commissioner Chavez, we'll turn the agenda back over to you. This would be as our part where we're going to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you and welcome, Commissioner Nash. Just for the record, we do have Vice Chair Rejo. I think he has his mic working now. So we'll go ahead and move into our next item, Pledge of Allegiance. And Commissioner Nash, do you mind leading us, please?
Commissioner Nash, your microphone.
I'm technology. Everybody, please stand, place your hand over your heart and recite after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Nash. We'll now move into public comments. This is an opportunity for the public to address the Planning Commission on matters within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission and that are items not appearing on the agenda. Each public speaker will have 3 minutes to address the commission. No action can be taken on any items. That will actually be referred to the commission secretary. Do we have any public comments?
Yes, we have one public comment from Henry Sapien.
Okay.
And we're trying to get in touch with him right now. Yeah. So we are in the process of trying to get in touch with him. The phone is showing as ringing.
Hello, Henry Sapien.
Yes.
Hi, you're live on the Planning Commission and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay. Awesome. Hello. Good evening, everybody. Reason tonight that I would like to talk is I just mainly want to just hope that we keep it in mind that the prices here in Oxnard being over $500,000 is not good for the city of Oxnard to grow. You know, to be honest with you, nobody knows in the city that they have to pay for their parks. And, you know, when we put prices that are so high, we got to remember at the end of the day, if unfortunately one of the spouses passes away and they have kids, I don't believe they'll be able to pay over $5,000, just one individual. I mean, let's be honest. None of these houses are worth over $500,000. And let's really think about the kids that live in these apartments on Channel Islands, you know, down C Street on the south side. Let's really think about it, because those kids have dreams. And if they are able to get into a house, if their parents are able to afford it, I mean, the dreams are outstanding. I mean, an example, I mean, my cousin, she got a house in Lindenwood in 2012, right? Her kid gets to go to Santa Clara High School. She pays for him to go there. They just refinance on their house. I mean, there's things in life that are way more precious in earth to give somebody a piece of land, a piece of mind, than charging something that is just, you know, too high. Doesn't make sense. You know, at the end of the day, I just feel like it's better for us to give back for our city than have our kids grow up in a future that they don't see. You know, it's just not fair at the end of the day. You know, I don't agree with the prices, and at the end of the day, we still have fields. It should still be considered article. That's why the prices of the medium should never go over as high. So I just really hope that the mayor and everybody on the city council can just think about those kids living in those apartments and, just think about 8 people living in a house compared to just originally 4 or 5. I mean, let's really think, because at the end of the day, I'd rather see people in houses and people understand about putting money in their city than having them pay too much money for a house. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And that's all I got to say. But thank you so much for your guys' time, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate the hard work that you guys are doing for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Sapien.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comments?
No, that's it.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and go on to our next item, which is our consent agenda, approval of our April 15th, 2021 minutes. Commissioner Lopez.
A motion to approve with a minor edit. I believe that the nomination for the vice chair, the vote was actually 4-0 on that. So just a super minor edit and motion to approve.
And Commissioner, staff agrees with that edit. For the record, we'll change it to a 4-2 vote, identifying, I believe Meyer and Sanchez were the no votes.
Commissioner Nash.
I will be abstaining for obvious reasons.
Okay. Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Rejo. So it's been moved and second for the approval with the correction of the vice chair vote for 4-2 with Sanchez and Meyer sustaining. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Lopez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Owejo,
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly,
Aye, thank you.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Nash,
Abstain?
Commissioner Sanchez,
Yes.
Chair Chavez,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. We'll now move into our ex parte declarations for public hearing items. We'll do the same format that we did last time. Respond with either a yes or no as I call your name. If yes, please disclose. Vice Chair Rejo.
No, Chair.
Commissioner Connolly.
My apologies. I have the wrong agenda. Can I go to the end?
Yeah, that's fine. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
No.
Commissioner Meyer.
I apologize, Chair. What was the question?
Ex parte.
No, thank you.
Commissioner Nash.
No.
Commissioner Sanchez.
No.
Commissioner Connolly.
No, thank you.
And no for myself. We'll go to staff for our public hearing item for an announcement.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. So the item that was originally scheduled for you tonight was a Central Terrace Apartments density bonus discussion. Since this one was originally put on your agenda, the applicant has requested that we continue the item from today's meeting to your next meeting on May 20th. Staff supports that recommendation and would ask the Planning Commission to do the same. We do need a formal vote to continue it.
Commissioner Lopez.
Quick question. Is anything going to change in the presentation on the YouTube that was shared with us, or will it be the same presentation? Just wondering if there's anything amended to that item for when we convene on the 20th.
When we come back on the 20th, if anything has changed in terms of the project, the staff report and or presentation would be updated. But as of this point in time, it's simply a request to continue the item as submitted.
Okay.
Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you. Is there any relevant timeline or deadline that we should be aware of, assuming the Planning Commission approves this delay? I just wanted to make sure we're not going against any timeline guardrails, or if there's anything that we should be made aware of.
Vice Chair Araujo and members of the Planning Commission, this was requested by the applicant, so there are no Permit Streamlining Act issues, but also because it is requested by the applicant, if they existed, they would have been waived.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chairman Chavez. I move that we approve the recommended action of pushing this hearing back until the, is it the May 20th meeting as per the applicant's request?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we continue the item to a date certain of May 20th, 2021. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Secretary.
Who second the motion, please?
Commissioner
Okay.
Meyer.
Thanks, Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Nash,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Owejo,
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanchez,
Yes.
Chair Chavez.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll now move into our study session and reports. Project name is Elevator Regulations Discussion, and presenting on this is going to be our Assistant Community Development Director, Jeff Pingili. I might have butchered that last name, I apologize. And our Planning and Environmental Services Manager, Scott Kolwitz. This is a receive and file report.
And Chair Chavez, I would like to point out as well, we're also joined by our Fire Marshal, Stephen McNaughton, today for this conversation as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jeff Pengelly, who drafted the memo for you on this one, and we'll be here for the discussion. So Jeff, it's all to you.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, Chairman Chavez and Commissioners. Jeff Pengelly, Assistant Director with Community Development. This is kind of a broad topic as far as all the potential code sections that could come into play. So we just put together a fairly broad-based memo, if you will, highlighting the most frequent occasions where elevators are either required or not required. And these cover the vast majority of the projects we see here in the city. If you don't mind, I'll just read down through the list and then expand a little bit upon what is written here for you and then open it up for some questions. This is derived from the 2019 California Building Code, which is our current source document for plan checking approval to the codes, if you will, for any kind of a building structure that's occupied. The first bullet point indicates privately funded commercial buildings, 3 stories or greater in height, are generally required to have an elevator. For the purpose of this discussion, commercial buildings is more like office buildings and retail, et cetera. Commercial building that would not include, for this bullet point in this discussion, residential occupancy. The next bullet point would be privately funded commercial buildings 2 stories in height are therefore not required to have an elevator, but there are some caveats to that. There's a limitation on floor area. If the floor area of the building, let's say it's a 2-story building, is more than 3,000 square feet, then this exception to not require an elevator does not apply, and it would have to have an elevator. And there's a couple other caveats to that if there's an office of a healthcare provider proposed on the upper story, then an elevator is required. And then there's a few other exceptions, such as if it's a shopping center, or a little more nuanced that we don't see too often, transit centers, airport terminals, et cetera. But in general, a commercial building, a small commercial building, 3,000 square feet, that's only 2 stories, no healthcare provider proposed on the upper floor, not a shopping center or something like that on the second floor, could be constructed without an elevator. As you notice, those first 2 bullet points start out with the title privately funded. That's directly out of the code. The third bullet point talks about public commercial buildings. Public building would be obviously for public purposes like the Civic Center here. It could also be, that definition could also include buildings that are constructed with public funds. It's a little more gray in that area. We usually see them as one or the other. It's built for a public purpose for the public to use by a public entity and funded by such. So it's usually pretty clear. In all cases, anything 2 stories and greater requires an elevator for public buildings. Residential, in general, the code requirement is that you have to be 4 stories or greater to require an elevator in a residential occupancy. There are some nuances to that, of course. The code, as they say, is written in the footnotes and the exceptions. Public housing generally follows that same requirement of residential housing that's not publicly funded. 4 stories is the trigger where an elevator is required. There are, in public housing, there are a variety of funding sources, and we in community development don't get involved with that. The funding sources themselves may have more stringent requirements. So you may see a requirement for an elevator imposed upon a project by the funding agency. And that could be anything under the sun. I really don't have a lot of specifics to offer on that, but that's something that's out there. In general, an overarching caveat to all of these is that in general, buildings constructed without an elevator by these exceptions here, they cannot have features and elements on the upper stories that are not similarly available on the ground floor. That's a very broad catch-all. It's primarily derived from disabled access codes. An example would be a 2-story office building, but they put the break room and cafeteria for the employees on the 2nd floor, or the large restroom groups on the 2nd floor. In that case, the elevator exception wouldn't apply. They would have to provide the equivalent features on the ground floor as well, or move those features to the ground floor, or they would have to install an elevator. In housing, it's a little more tricky. In general, the best example I could give is if there was a 3-story privately funded apartment project that the code would not require elevators for, but the developer was proposing to have the larger units, 3 and 4 bedrooms, for example, on the upper floors. That would be a problem because that wouldn't be equivalent facilitation. All housing has to have accessibility at least to the ground floor if there's no elevator. So you could not offer 1-bedroom units on the ground floor to potentially disabled purchasers or renters, and then have the larger units upstairs for only the able-bodied renters in this case. That would not be allowed. So they would have to provide a mix of units on the accessible ground floor and also on the upper floors. And we find that builders in general, it's more of an amenity feature to provide an elevator, especially in housing, even if the code doesn't require it. It's just such a challenge for the residents to move furniture and groceries, et cetera. But we do have, housing costs are very high. And so, and the number of units needed, you've seen our RENA numbers, we consistently need more and more units. So there is a desire to build, there is some pressure to build without an elevator to save costs, but it's a trade-off. It's just a developer decision, and there are some other overarching disabled access requirements for equivalent facilitation that may limit their project if they choose to do that, that drives them to put in an elevator. That's the basics here that we see in most cases. Again, there's a few special cases like hazardous materials occupancies and laboratory occupancies, things that don't come up very often. But this is the bulk of what we see here developed in our city.
Fire Marshal McNaughton, do you have anything to add?
So access for the elevators means easier access for emergency responders. And when you talk about access for elevators for emergency response, you have to talk about defined sizes for the elevators so that we can have our gurneys and our equipment up into there. So an example is we asked for a gurney size elevator in a recent design plan. So they put the elevator to the smallest so it cross-fit in there and there was no way to get it through the door. So space is a premium, but I know that when we're dealing with patient care, anytime we go above story, it's easier to access for the elevators. And I would say, just as Jeff was speaking, is if you have a construction of say a triplex or duplex, that both buildings come from the ground floor and you have 3-story, then that, as a residence. But if you have like a center hallway construction, you should have some sort of elevator to those stories for that kind of access. So.
Thank you, and we'll go ahead to our commissioners. Commissioner Conlon.
Thank you, Mr. Pengilly, for that detailed report. I just wanted to clarify for the public that this is like a clear example of the American Disabilities Act, which is not just city related. It's a federal thing that everyone's dealing with. So it's not unique just to us.
Okay, Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you again for the presentation. I forgot who brought this up or which people or persons. So I appreciate you having this put on the study session for the Planning Commission. And just in general, this topic is really important to me and my family. My father is in a wheelchair, and so we basically decide where to go based on how accessible various places are. And so hopefully that's going to be kept in mind in future discussions for everything else. I do have a couple questions. I see that the California Building Code is cited. Are there any more stringent requirements placed by the city? And then I have a second question. I assume that the elevators are inspected and approved when they're constructed. Who does the approval, and is there any follow-up approvals in following years? Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rejo. Good question. So the city does, through the mechanism of adopting the building code, the city can only modify the state's building code in a more stringent manner through a very lens of specific criteria. They're from memory, climatic, geological, and topographical reasons. A good example of that is we're in a high seismic region, and we make certain changes to the California code with respect to seismic design. They're very minor changes, but the code is not deficient by any means, but we're enhancing a few little things and clarifying some things. So the city does not, through that code adoption process, modify anything related to elevators, because we would not have the nexus to a climatic, geologic, or topographical reason to do so. And then the second, the installation of the physical installation of an elevator in new construction, it's plan checked by the city engineers and plan check staff. There's a variety of things we're looking for. It's everything from the locations of the buttons and the call and the size of the cab, and related to disabled access. There are very specific requirements in the California Building Code pertaining to disabled access for those dimensions and features of the elevator. But the physical mechanism of lifting the elevator and the safety features of the elevator, we are not looking at as it's a product that is regulated by the state through the labor code, and we call it the elevator code. Our building inspectors look at the structure that supports the elevator, the electrical power to it, the fire rating of the hoistway, the fire rating of the machine room, things like that, but we're not looking at the mechanical safety systems of the elevator. There's a state elevator inspector that does that, and they certify the elevators before they're first occupied. And then there's a, I don't want to misspeak. I think it's an annual inspection. It may be every couple of years or every 3 years. I'm not clear on that, but there's a state elevator inspector that has to recertify the elevators over a certain period of time. And I believe that's prescribed by the labor code through the elevator codes there. But the city does not enforce the labor code and the elevator codes in that way.
Thank you very much.
To our fire marshal, did you have anything to add to that?
For elevators, the only restraint we have is the size and ability to get our equipment in there. Other than that, we have no other regulations or authority to do that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Okay, then I will jump in there. I appreciate staff bringing this to us when our former chair, Frank, and former Commissioner Dozier was on the commission. One of the concerns that 3 of us brought up was the elevators and when it actually got triggered. And it had to deal with the project that came to us. Our concerns was more of accessibility. And it was already mentioned that it's more of an amenity to have it. It's an add-on. And so 2 questions in regards to, I understand that there are some public housing and, you know, it may be triggered on certain levels, but on a mixed use public housing, or it probably isn't a public housing, but when it comes to a mixed use property, what are the guidelines for it to be triggered? Is it still the 4 or more, or does it alter because now it has a commercial component to it?
Yeah, you hit a very challenging question in terms of all the different permutations that could come out of that. So let's imagine that there's commercial on the 2nd story of that mixed use. Generally, we're seeing a lot of commercial on the ground level and residential above. We're seeing a lot of that proposed and a few things entitled thus far, especially in the downtown. So if there's commercial on the 2nd floor, we would treat I think that the approach would be to treat them with these general guidelines that I put on this memo, that we put on this memo, independently, and the most restrictive applies. There are some nuances to that. Later, let's say there's commercial on the ground level and residential above. You can conceivably have an elevator from the ground level just to the ground floor of the multi-story housing above. So it would be it wouldn't be a full height elevator serving all of the units. That's one possible scenario. But in general, we would look at the most restrictive and then apply that. But that can be quite challenging when you get all the different permutations of mixed use.
And I apologize. I understand that was a loaded question.
It's a good question.
I'm also very curious in regards to, there are some developments in our city, and I'm assuming that they'll be proposed in the future as well, where we have underground parking versus ground level parking. Are those fall under that same guidelines as mixed use? You know, just enough to get from the parking up to the residential?
Yeah, there's if there's a kind of a catch in the disabled access codes where if you build let's say a 4-story multifamily housing product and you choose to put an elevator in it, every unit on all floors has to meet what's called adaptability features. Housing is a little different. It's not full accessibility like you might see in a disabled accessible hotel room. It's adaptable. So you have backing in the walls to install grab bars, but the grab bars aren't there, and many other features. Once you put in that elevator that serves all floors, it seems a little punitive that all units have to be adaptable, but it's really not a challenging feature for builders to meet because, again, it's adaptable. It's not fully accessible. There are cases, like I said, it's more of an amenity for them to choose to provide that or not, but there is an allowance, as you were getting to, that would prescribe that you can have an elevator just from the parking level to the first level of dwelling units. So that could be one scenario. And you know, I think it boils down to the benefits to the residents versus the cost of installing a one-stop elevator versus a four-stop elevator, I don't think the economics are too much against just putting the full height elevator in. I think the basic space for the ground floor elevator, the machinery, the equipment is not much less expensive than just making a full height elevator and giving the residents the benefit of that. But that's not codified. That's a developer economic decision.
Now, and I apologize if I had missed it. Any housing projects that are like tailored towards the very low to low income that are 4 or 5 stories high, are they required to have an elevator? They still have to follow that 4 or more, correct?
Correct. There's nothing in the code about affordable housing being any different. In fact, yeah, the code is intended to provide a minimum level of safety and access to the built product, regardless of income. So we're very much we're very cautious to make sure every project meets the minimum life safety and accessibility standards, and the code backs that up.
I appreciate that. And just the final question, does the cities in California have the ability to adjust when the trigger actually occurs? Or is that only done at the state?
It's more of I think it's a bigger picture policy question and a legal question about how the city does that. I don't think that we can't do it through the building code adoption process. But that's not to say that city council doesn't have the authority to make findings and require some more stringent triggers for elevators. Obviously, there's arguments on both sides of that, and it's a political decision and a policy decision. But my answer that I'm fairly certain of is that we could not make a finding that there's a geologic, topographic, or climatic reason to require that. So it would have to be something adopted by city council.
Okay, I appreciate that. Is there any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing and hearing none. We appreciate staff and our fire marshal for joining us and presenting this. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to our next item, which is Planning Commission business. This is an opportunity for planning commissioners to make any quick announcements or disclose what they've been doing outside of the commission. Anybody? No? I'll just quickly say, welcome back to the commission, Commissioner Nash. We know, well, from when I used to sit in the audience, it was always great hearing you question and really work hard for the public. So it's great to have you join us once again and continue doing the work for our fellow residents here. Commissioner Connolly.
I just recommend all of you commissioners here and then the public that's listening to just read the American Disabilities Act after the presentation that we just had, because I think it's a really informative document, federal document, and I think it would clarify a lot of things that we just discussed.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just also wanted to welcome Commissioner Nash. Look forward to working with you. I know I spoke with you as I was considering joining the commission, and you were helpful. And so appreciate having all your years of experience and your commitment on board.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, Commissioner Sanchez.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I also welcome to the Planning Commission. I know everybody else has said hello, and I'm also saying hello and welcome
back. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you for your kind words, and I hope that we have great success.
Sounds good. We'll now move to our next item, which is our community development staff updates. Mr. Colvitz.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. And I'll just have 2 quick ones for the Planning Commission tonight. Last week, on the 29th, the city council met and did a couple of things. One you were participated in, which was seeing Commissioner Nash nominated. Following that, we went right into the parliamentarian exercise and training. So thank you all for being there for that. And then the other item of note that evening was the draft housing element was reviewed by the city council. And they followed the staff recommendation to send the draft up to the State's Department of Housing and Community Development for their review. And that was a pretty monumental task because that puts us in motion to complete the housing element adoption in late October. So we're looking forward to going through that exercise and bringing it back to you as part of that final review. So that was monumental, actually. Aside from that, the only other announcement I had was your next meeting is 2 weeks from now. So we look forward to seeing you all on the 20th. So in the meantime, thank you and be safe out there.
Commissioner Nash. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
I had a quick question for staff. I know I brought up at our last Planning Commission meeting in terms of the motion by Commissioner Meyer with the addition of the rent control, the just cause in the Ventura County Farm Worker Program. I actually went back to the video to confirm this, but we were told by staff at our last meeting that you had shared the Planning Commission motion with the City Council Subcommittee of Jurisdiction and that they didn't change or recommend a different motion, and so that it was going intact. But I believe that what the City Council may have seen at the last meeting did not include it. Could you clarify if it was or if it wasn't, and if it wasn't, if something changed from our last meeting to when it got to City Council, please?
So Commissioner Lopez, gladly. So the text of the document has not changed as it's gone through the motions. It was direction to staff to do certain things. So essentially what's happening is there's been direction along the way that we've received. City Council's followed up on that direction. The state's Department of Housing and Community Development is likely to have their own edits as well to our document. And as we continue to engage in the public outreach process, we're still likely to have more edits, if you will, from members of the public. So for sake of efficiency of time and moving forward, because October is going to be here very quickly, there was the verbal report out as to what was given by our Planning and Sustainability Manager, Kathleen Mallory, with the follow-up direction of how to proceed. So, but clear direction was given for staff to follow various programs as we move forward.
Okay, and so at some point, that information or those motions will be included in the text as the report moves forward, right? So at some point, it will be included, and then, of course, action may be taken and changed.
That is accurate.
I see. Okay, well, thank you so much for the clarification. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Is there any other questions or comments from my colleagues? I'll just say that I learned a lot from that parliamentary training, and it was pretty awesome to see a joint session between the Planning Commission and the City Council. And I will be looking to my Vice Chair and Commissioner Connolly for their support in making sure that I stay on track. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in line with the parliamentary training, I did want to confirm that we will be receiving the presentation or some form of that presentation. There was something mentioned during the training about that, if I recall correctly.
The cheat sheets.
Or at least the cheat sheets, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, Commissioners, Ken Roselle and I will follow up on that and distribute it accordingly.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jeff.
So if I recall correctly from the training, if there's no further items, Vice Chair Rejo.
I'm sorry, Chair. I preceded you. I was going to make a motion after your assumed going to the last item.
Yes, so the last item is adjournment. So if I'm correct, we can just adjourn, or I'm seeing yes, seeing no. Okay, so with that, since this is our last item and there's no further discussions, we will adjourn to our next meeting on Thursday, May 20th, 2020 at 6 p.m. Thank you, staff. Thank you, my colleagues, and everyone have a safe night. Thank you.
Thank you. You all take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.